Okay, so back to positioning and pricing. Just want to I just want to set some expectations. So we've got 20 minutes left. I'm definitely not going to be able to to tell you how to set a value-based price in 20 minutes. What I want to do is raise some questions and get you really thinking about what it is you're doing with your own pricing and what you could and should be doing differently to enter the UK market, but also in your domestic markets or any markets that you operate in now. So we're going to just really think about what you potentially need to change. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Actually, before we focus on price, just very quickly, there was a slide that I skipped over earlier because I thought, oh, it's really a basic one. But I think I'm going to just go back to it because I think it's really, I'm sure that the guys in the audience who work in tech know about optimizing websites way better than I do, but we're all of different levels and standards, I think, in terms of where we are with website design and how well we use our website. So just a few really key things, some very basics here on how to make your website work best for you. And very relevant because we talked about, what was it, a huge amount, I can't remember the percentage now, of the buyer journey will happen before they even speak to you. So that means that predominantly it's going to be online. A huge part of that research is going to be online that your potential audience are doing. So your website has to be immediately engaging, and that means that it's using this value-based language. What's important to your user. It's not about your thing. It's about what your thing does for them, how it improves their life. We've talked about that. It needs to be specifically designed for your buyers, of course. I'd say, of course, but you need to know about how your buyers' preferences are and how they behave and what they want to see. Of course, it needs to be mobile enabled. Huge percentage of research, engagement, and transactions are done on mobile devices, of course. It needs to be easy to navigate. So, the less clicks, the better to get to where your users need to be. There needs to be good quality educational content. We looked briefly at different types of content that are required. It will depend on what you do, what your business is, as to what type you use. But the content has to be educational and interesting for your users. The language and tone of voice. I mean, obviously the level of English needs to be excellent on your website if you're targeting the UK market. And I will say that English people tend to be a little, to use an English word, pedantic on language. They will judge, rightly or wrongly, if there's incorrect grammar or incorrect spelling on your website. They will believe you to be unprofessional. That's a little, can be very unfair, of course, but just to say that's very important. Site speed, of course, if your site takes long to load or any pages take long to load, you'll lose, of course, your audience. And regularly updated. I think small businesses in particular, it's really hard to find the time and the resource and the energy to update the websites regularly, but it's really important that it's done. And there's many more things. I'm not an expert in website optimization, but there's many companies out there who are, and there's a lot to be said on this topic. So that was just wanted to add that before we go on to pricing. So I've used up several of my 20 minutes of pricing now. Okay, so the pricing was the final step on our optimizing our value journey. I should say it doesn't really work in order like this. Of course, you're going to be starting to think about your price when you're thinking about your target audience. Are you targeting an audience? Do you have a premium product, and therefore that will impact the audience you're targeting, the price you're charging? So this is really, these 4 steps really all work together. So why is setting the right price important? Critically, it enables you to capture the value you've created. And I like to use this term, earn what you deserve and deserve what you earn. You need to be earning the right profit as a company for the level of value you create in terms of your products and services and the experience you give. You can optimize your profits and revenues. There's all sorts of facts out there about a 1% increase in price can give you a 10% increase in bottom line profit. It will define your brand position. How do you want to be perceived? We know that we make judgments, we have perceptions of companies based on their price. we tend to think their quality is reflected in their price, and it will help you build brand loyalty. Okay, so then just one thing here that I like this quote. Warren Buffett, of course, he's one of the most successful investors in companies of all time, and he says the single most important decision in evaluating a business is its pricing power, and that means the ability of a company to get the price it deserves for what it delivers. Okay, so I think we can learn a lot. So although we can't talk about exactly what to do, how to get it right, I think we can learn a lot by looking through this list of common pricing mistakes. And I'm going to go through them and talk about them all briefly. So cost plus pricing. Barbara alluded to this earlier, and it's true what Barbara said. In my work in the Slovene market and many other markets, to be honest, cost plus pricing is still prevalent, which means a company taking all of its costs and adding on a standard margin. Now, by doing that, you don't take into account any concept of what the customer is actually willing to pay. And let's say you're adding on you're adding on a 50% margin. For some of your products or services, that might be too much, in which case you'll lose sales. For some of it might be too little, in which case you lose profit opportunity, in which I say leaving money on the table or losing customers. If we've got time, we'll look at a few examples to bring that to life. And this is similar, actually, having a standard markup on all your products. There's a reason I've got this mango here, and it's because I used this in before. I was actually in the market in Ljubljana, the lovely fruit and veg market. I hope it's still there and still operating throughout COVID. This is probably 5 years ago, and but I always remember this. And I went to a fruit store, and there was all sorts of fruit and veg there, and there's very, very, very low priced. I think it was apples, very, very high priced mangoes, and these poor mangoes were all sitting there shriveling up and not being sold. And there was other products that were very, very much underpriced, and this fruit seller could have made more profit on them. And it just struck me as an example, as this is an instance where all of this fruit and veg has had the same margin applied, and either sales are being lost, or product was being sold at less profit than the customers would have been willing to pay and could have been gained. Anyway, it's perhaps a silly example, but okay, so cost plus pricing, standard markup on all products, don't do it. One size fits all pricing. This is, I mentioned it earlier, you will have different customers who will have a different willingness to pay. And we can think of examples. Let me think. Airlines, for example. Often airlines, or always airlines, have different segments within their business. That there's a different customer segments that they're targeting. Of course, they have different needs, and of course, they have a different price. So we can think very simply about the business class, the premium economy, and the economy class. Differentiated segments, differentiated messages, differentiated price. Essentially, it doesn't cost that much more to service them, but they have those business class passengers, they're prepared to pay a lot of money to feel pampered. So that little extra glass of champagne, or maybe in first class, a blanket, it doesn't cost very much, but the price, if you think about the price that's charged for that, it's phenomenal. And then you take it one step further. Within a brand, you can have a premium option and a budget option actually within the brand. The key thing is to make sure that you communicate that difference. Pricing too low or unnecessary discounting, as often it's happened very much. We all know examples of price wars that have happened. It's tempting to start competing on price. I always would advise against it, because when companies start competing on price, all that happens is that the profit available in that industry will just go down. It's kind of a fight to the bottom. We don't want that. Many of my clients, they feel very resistant, hesitant to do regular price increases each year to increase their prices. But as an organization, I'm sure you'll recognize that your prices go up, and it's really important to pass those price increases on. Customers expect it. All big successful companies tend to do it. Of course, there's exceptions to this. In technology, we don't always see price increases, of course, and in various industries that's not appropriate, but it often is. So make sure you consider it. And then this is fairly common. So if a company brings in a new product, you have to be really careful that it doesn't take away business from your existing product. So for example, let me just think, if you've got, if you sell soft drinks and you've got two sizes, a small and a large, and you introduce a medium, then think about where the customers are going to move from. Are they going to move from the large to the medium or the small to the medium? And your pricing will determine how they behave. And this is in all sorts, this works across, all products and services. Whenever you introduce something new, think about, okay, what are my customers going to do here? I don't want to take business. It was, going back to business class and economy, when the premium economy was introduced, the airlines had to be really careful that proposition wasn't too strong and too well priced to take away their very profitable customers from business class. So that's something that needs to be considered. And the final point, back to my banging on about research, you really need to understand what different customers are willing to pay. Comes back to understanding what they value, comes back to market research and really having good knowledge. Quick example there, we had, I was working with a supplier, it was for Hewlett Packard, and it's one of the sticks in my mind. I can't remember what it was, but they produced a thing that was fundamental to the production line. And that thing didn't really cost very much money. But the impact it had in terms of ensuring that production would never go down, ever, in terms of the value that offered to the client was huge. So never think about the value of your thing in your terms, think about what it means to the customer. So that was a quick run through of common pricing mistakes. There's a lot to think about there, I know, but hopefully it just triggered some thinking. I've got an example here, and I was interested to see, I think we have a water company here in the audience. So I like to use these examples, different examples at different times. This is about not having standard markups. It's about not doing cost plus pricing, and it's about thinking about willingness to pay. And these are some potential markups that we see out there in the market every day. When we go and buy a coffee from wherever it is, Starbucks or whatever, that's definitely not cost plus pricing. That's about what people are prepared to pay for the whole experience. A lot of this is products. Bottled water is classic, and we'll look over here in a minute. But on the service front, in logistics, for example, if somebody wants something there and they want it there the next day or the next morning or the same day, that they're prepared to pay more because that's very, very important to them. So there'll be very high markups. This isn't about, and I should say this is not about charging customers too much. It really isn't. It's about giving them choices. And, back to the airlines, there's a choice there. You can go budget airline, you can go premium airline. In the world of water, there's a choice of you can have tap water that costs you nothing, or you can have the very expensive, hang on, let's see if I can see my screen. It's crazy. I think those bottles must have literally crystals or diamonds on them. I think they probably have got diamonds on them for the price that is being charged for some crazy products. The point I want to make here is it's not about cost plus, it's about what customers value. It's not about ripping off your customers or the market. It's about providing choice. Different people have different needs. They have different willingness to pay. So think about that really carefully when you're setting your price level. Okay, so hang on a second. So how do we do it right? Very quickly here. How do we do it right in 10 minutes? There's three things that you need to look at in your pricing. Your price level, how much does it cost? 10, 5,000, 250. What's the optimal price level? I'm going to talk about the factors there. What price structure? Do you have bundles? Do you have a base list plus add-ons? Do you have this kind of bronze, silver, gold sort of three-tiered system? What works best? And there's many options out there now. And price management, this often gets left behind. That's what I was talking about. Regular price reviews, making sure your salespeople can't discount too much. Lots of things in there. We're going to mainly look at price level here. Key elements into setting the right price level. You'll of course know all of these things. Cost is important. It's not the most important thing. The market conditions, your brand position, I've spoken about before. Where do you want to be seen? The competitor landscape, of course, that's critically important. But what we're going to talk about mainly here is the customer willingness to pay or value-based pricing. But on the competitor landscape, I would say, when you're comparing with, so once you do your research, you find your competitors in the UK who's doing a similar thing to you, make sure that when you compare the price of your product or service and the competitor products and services, you're really comparing, what we say in English, apples with apples. So you're looking at not just the features or not just the actual offer, the thing that's being offered, but all of the add-ons or the extras or the customer experience. Because when you understand that, you can work out how you differentiate, how you differ. And it doesn't have to be that you're better and you're more expensive. It could be that you have less of those features, but it could be there's customers that don't need them and they don't want to pay that high price for all those features, if that makes sense. So I guess my message is that when you're looking at your competitor landscape, make sure that you look at the full picture. Don't do a light touch price comparison. Okay, so I'm not going to say any more about any of these other points for now. I've been talking about this thing called value-based pricing. What is it? And I'd like to explain this visually. So we've got two situations here where one needs to buy petrol. And the question is, how much would this person, this poor lady, pay for her gas in situation one when she's clearly stuck on the roadside and run out? And how much is she going to pay when she's just driving into a garage, fully prepared to pay for what the market price for her petrol is? So just an illustration to say the approach is based on a customer's perceived value of a product or a service. And that changes depending on their circumstances, what they find important, all those things we talked about before. So value-based pricing is a pricing approach that sets prices predominantly, but not exclusively, on the perceived or estimated value a consumer places on a product, service, or feature, as opposed to simply being priced on cost, competitors, or historic pricing. Now, of course, this requires a really good understanding of what your customers need. Oops, keeps doing this. And I just wanted to, we're not going to be able to go through the whole process of how to do this, of course, today. And I'll talk later about how I could be available to help you with that. But what I wanted to do is just get you thinking about how this happens all around us all of the time. So if we think about, probably most of you are familiar with booking. The customers go, they want to book a holiday, a hotel, an experience. What are their needs beyond the obvious things around their holiday? Particularly now, more so than ever, one of the key needs of travelers is flexibility. So what do we see here? If we look at the booking example, we see that there's a higher price for a non-refundable. So you have to confess, this is quite an old slide. I think that's changed now. I think the price for flexibility is actually higher. Or in some cases, it's not. In some cases, in fact, in many cases, customers are meeting their customer requirements by saying, we know you want flexibility. We know it's really important to you. So for this period of time, we're going to give that to you for the same price. So there's different ways of approaching it. And as long as you have a strong story, but it's all around identifying those factors and considering them in your pricing strategy. It's about being also in the right place at the right time, which clearly this ice cream van is not. Not much value of ice cream in those snow-covered mountains. So we're going to come back and talk a little more about price level. I just want to talk about price structure. There's many different ways that you can structure your prices. And again, I just want to encourage you to think about, are you doing this right now in the right way? Are you thinking about how your customers want to buy from you? Do you have your products and services bundled together, or are they separate? Are you giving the most opportunity for your customers to be able to buy in the way they want to buy, incorporating ease of use, etc.? Just a couple of examples here. LinkedIn, probably something you're all familiar with. They have different propositions, different bundles for different types of users, and they have a different price, of course, for each of those. I have some more examples, but I think what I rather do is that we go on to talk about the to work interactively and have the opportunity for questions. Just let me see if I can. No, we could talk about this in the breakouts. So what we've covered in the time that we've had together is this journey. So we've taken a real sort of snapshot in each of these areas. What are the needs? Do you match them? How well do you communicate them? How's the experience at every single touch point? And do you understand what your customers value in order to be able to price correctly? All of those factors on pricing that we talked about. Cost is one thing, but your brand position, where you sit in comparison to your competitor pricing, what's the willingness to pay of your different customer segments? Think about the business class, the economy class type passengers, different needs, different offers, different prices. So these are all the things I really want to encourage you to think about. I was really happy to hear when Christina was talking about the fact that market research is offered as a part of the support service of the DIT, because I think obviously everybody knows that you can't enter a new market without really understanding it. So that research offered as a free service from the DIT is fantastic. There's also many, I'm not a customer researcher, but I partner with research companies. There's many great research companies that can help you answer all the questions that you need, not just about the market, but about the customers and their behavior and their preferences. So some do's and don'ts here, but I think we've been through them. You'll get this presentation, by the way. This is going to be shared. So we've got an interactive. Now this is a little experimental because there's a lot in here. There's been a lot to think about. Now, what I didn't want to do was ask you to define your value proposition or set your price. Of course, that's unrealistic in this time. But what I would like you to do is make a plan for how you're going to do that. Christina also said quite rightly that whilst the UK has a huge amount of opportunity, it's hard work. It's hard work to be successful there, and that hard work has to start with a really good plan of what do you need to know, what do you need to do, and what steps do you need to take to be successful. So let's start to think about that. Now, there's going to be 3 groups, as Barbara mentioned, 5 or 6 of you in each group. Now, each group needs a willing volunteer to be a test for this sort of case study, if you like, that we're going to do, or this planning that we're going to do, I should say. If really nobody wants to do it, then you can choose another company, but I really advise for you to use one of your own in your group. Now, together, I'd like you to look at the things we've been talking about today, and you can take a particular thing. You can look at the value messaging for that company. How is it positioned? How does it speak to the audience? Assess it in light of, because obviously you're all successful in your own markets. You've already got great sales pitches. You're already doing business. You're already having success. So what we want to assess is, how will that work for moving into a new market? Now, I know you don't know the ins and outs of your customers in the new market. You don't know their preferences necessarily. Maybe you do already, actually. But how are you going to find out? And then what are you going to do to tailor your messaging and tailor your activities to your audience? So really thinking through, okay, this is what we have now. what do we need to change, and where do we want to be, and how are we going to get there? So to make a plan, hopefully that makes sense. And that's what I'm talking about here in the step 3. Identify what needs to be done to ensure the approach will work and drive success and profit in the UK. Now, I've got in brackets there to think about your pricing if you have time. If you have time, please include the steps that you would take to get your price right in the UK as well.